let's talk about dopamine. Most people know it as the pleasure chemical. But in reality, it's a $1 trillion lethal weapon aimed directly at your brain. You see, companies like Apple, Meta, Amazon, and even Google have weaponized this primitive chemical to steal your precious minutes and hours down to the last second, to bombard you with ads, products, and anything that fills their pockets with cash. But a smart group of everyday people have rewired their brain to use dopamine to their advantage to turn dopamine into millions. And in this video, I'm going to be telling you about the secret. And you can use this secret to trick your brain to make working hard literally feel easier than scrolling on Instagram. But pay close attention, because if not used correctly, you'll end up wasting years of your life. You see, most people think that dopamine is the chemical responsible for reward. But dopamine is actually responsible for motivation and craving. From ancient times, dopamine has been the chemical that motivated humans to create new things and evolve. Your brain releases this chemical to reward your brain for anything you do that helps you survive. The amount of dopamine each thing you do releases is directly correlated with how motivated you feel to do that particular thing again. To give you an example, having sex or eating a piece of chocolate make your brain release a very big amount of dopamine. Hence why it feels so good and why you're more likely to want to do it again and again and again. But the problem is that in today's world, dopamine is not longer useful for survival. You don't need dopamine to motivate you to build a shelter or hunt your prey. And it's now become the #1 reason people feel lazy, unmotivated, unproductive, or even get addicted to substances and destructive habits. This is all true until you understand how the world's most successful people leverage dopamine strategically to build massive companies, new life-changing technology, and achieve great success. It all starts from you refilling the dopamine tank. Now, your dopamine levels will constantly change throughout the day. You can go from motivated to unmotivated to unhappy to motivated again. In other words, you will experience highs in dopamine, but you'll also experience lows. Where your dopamine levels are at each hour of the day is directly correlated to how motivated, productive, or lazy and unmotivated you feel. And here's how the dopamine system works. Imagine your dopamine levels like a tank filled with water. The level of water resembles your levels of dopamine. Now, think about what will happen if you grab that tank and shake it with your hands. It will create waves, and those waves are waves of dopamine, which is the fluctuation of your motivation and drive levels throughout the day. But here's one very important thing you need to know about how the dopamine system works. The more you shake that tank, the bigger waves you'll create, and the bigger the waves, the more water will spill out of the tank, which means that the water level will drop lower and lower and lower. This is normal. There are things you will do throughout your day, like drinking coffee, listening to music, or working, that can actually lead to big waves that cause your dopamine levels to drop, which ultimately makes you feel lazy and unmotivated without really knowing why. We've all been there, and it sucks. You keep drinking more coffee, taking more stimulants, or even listening to a different type of music, but you still struggle to feel as motivated as you did before. This happens because you probably don't know how to refill your dopamine tank, but instead, you keep pushing hard pursuing your goal until you hit a point that you're exhausted or you burn out. As there are things you do in your day that deplete your dopamine levels, there are also things that not a lot of people talk about that can refill your dopamine levels. As a result, you'll be able to maintain high levels of motivation to keep pursuing hard things and maintain high productivity without burning out. One of the most powerful things you can use to refill the dopamine tank is called NSDR, or non-sleep deep rest. Scientists like Andrew Huberman use this protocol at least once a day to refill the dopamine tank. 2 really good studies analyzed how NSDR affects dopamine levels. And what they found is that doing NSDR for as little as 10 minutes a day has really dramatic increases in the dopamine tank level. So it's like taking 20 cups of water and pouring it back into the tank. The way you want to do NSDR is ideally right before you go to bed at night, put on a guided NSDR session like this you see right now on the screen. This will not only help you fall asleep much easier, but it will refill the dopamine tank significantly, which will help you wake up feeling 10 times as motivated the next day. But this only works if you know how to maintain the water level, aka the dopamine level in the tank, consistently high. Because as I said before, the bigger the wave of dopamine, the more water will spill out of the tank. And while knowing how to refill that tank daily, if your waves are big enough, you simply can't just make up for it by doing one session of NSDR at night. You won't feel the difference until you implement something called dopamine stacking. Going back to the basic idea of how by shaking the dopamine tank, you create waves that cause the water or dopamine to spill out of the tank, this means that you need to control how big the waves are. You see, every single thing you do throughout the day affects your dopamine levels. There are things that have a bigger impact, and there are things that don't have that big of an impact. The more things with big impact you combine together, the bigger waves you create, which is what ultimately drains the dopamine tank and causes you to burn out. If you look at what the highest performers of the world do, you will find out that they avoid combining too many of those high dopamine sources together. The way you do that is you take the things you're currently doing in your day, coffee, work, music, gym, food, nicotine, and you want to avoid combining more than 2 of them together at a time. For example, if you go to the gym and you've drank pre-workout or coffee and you have music playing in the background to hype you up, you will cause a huge wave in the dopamine tank, which will cause a lot of water to spill out of the tank, which will make it extremely hard for you to sustain high performance long term. But instead, if you go to the gym without coffee and without music, you'll still create a dopamine wave, but it will be significantly smaller, which will allow you to sustain high levels of motivation and performance for your other tasks so that you can work harder and with more creativity for longer without burning out and feeling exhausted. So from now on, during periods in which you want to maintain very high levels of motivation and output, don't combine more than 2 and maximum 3 big sources of dopamine at a time. And you will find out that you'll start being more productive, waking up feeling excited to work, and entering flow state much easier. But there's something most people do wrong here, and it causes them to still wake up exhausted and lack motivation to work. It's the silent productivity killer, otherwise known as coffee. You see, coffee, if used correctly, can be a game changer for your productivity. If not, your motivation levels will drop lower and lower and lower over time. And this makes complete sense when you understand how coffee works. Every time you drink coffee, your dopamine receptors become more sensitive and increase in number. As a result, when your neurons spit out dopamine, the parking spots responsible for consuming that dopamine are more hungry and have more space, which makes anything you're doing while drinking coffee more exciting, interesting, and fun. Coffee also gives you energy, but that's another topic and it has nothing to do with dopamine. Now, what most people do wrong when they're drinking coffee is that they drink it every day. And the reason this is a problem is because when you drink coffee every day, your dopamine baseline levels gradually start depleting. What happens because of that is that you will need to drink more coffee to just get the same release in dopamine. And over time, the difference between the amount of coffee you'll need to drink and the dopamine response you get from it is huge, which ultimately means that you'll need to drink more and more coffee just to feel normal at best. This happens because at this point, it will be nearly impossible for your brain to perform without drinking coffee, which means that because you don't want to feel bad, you won't stop drinking coffee. And the more you drink, the more your dopamine baseline decreases. So what you need to do instead is to maintain high levels of motivation naturally. And then when you really want to perform at an extremely high level, let's say because you got a very mentally demanding day, then to use coffee on those days to perform above baseline and to not need coffee to maintain your low baseline. And the way you achieve that is by following 3 key rules. Number 1, drink coffee 3 to 4 times a week max. Number 2, when you drink coffee, don't combine it with more than 2 other dopamine sources. For example, intense music, other dopaminergic stimulants like nicotine, working out, junk food, etc. And number 3, stop drinking coffee 10 hours before bed. This is because if you drink coffee closer to 10 hours before bed, it will impact your sleep quality. And simply because good sleep is another thing your brain requires in order to fill the dopamine tank, it's really important that your sleep is good consistently. Otherwise, you're still using coffee wrong. But there's probably a big question mark in your brain right now. Because who cares if you're drinking coffee properly, if you do NSDR, and if you do dopamine stacking, if you're still getting distracted from notifications, messages, social media, and your phone. None of the things you know so far matter if you don't implement the anti-dopamine phone setup. Picture this. You open your phone to do something you wanted, and then you end up replying to random messages, checking social media, and after a while, you forget why you opened your phone in the first place. And just like that, another 15 minutes go by. The average person spends about 4 hours a day on their phone. That's 1,460 hours a month. After 50 years of doing this, that's 73,000 hours. That's 8.2 years of your life spent on your phone. And this all happens because of your dopamine. Your phone is simply too interesting for your brain, and as a result, the minutes and hours keep piling up without you even realizing. What you need to do here is to remove all the dopamine from your phone and rewire your brain to not be interested about your phone. The anti-dopamine phone setup, if used correctly, will allow you to not only get back tens of lost years of your life, but it will also allow you to save that mental energy and brain power and use it for the things that are important. I'll show you how to implement the anti-dopamine phone setup in 3 steps. Step number 1, you want to go to your settings, accessibility, display and text size, color filters, and turn them on. And now with your phone looking like this, you've instantly removed the majority of the dopamine response your brain gets from it. All of the different colors your eyes see when you use your phone are all interesting to your brain, and you subconsciously try to filter and process all of them. And by turning your phone black and white, it's no longer that interesting and draining. Step 2, take all of the apps you know you don't need to have and delete them from your phone completely. And this can even be apps you use for your work, especially if it's something you can do from your laptop. Delete it. Delete it from your phone immediately. For example, if you use Instagram for work, but you can also use Instagram from your laptop, delete it from your phone, and you will be amazed by how much harder it is to get distracted and scroll from your laptop. And step 3, every time you try to work or do something productive, keep your phone in an entirely different room. Now, you can still go up and get your phone, but there's enough friction in between that will cause you to double think before you do it. And that second thought is exactly what you need to rewire your brain through something called neuroplasticity. Now your phone is 100 times less interesting to your brain, and just like that, you have a competitive advantage amongst other people. Because if you're able to reclaim all of these lost years of your life that are spent on your phone being distracted, you'll instantly have more time, energy, and focus to be more productive and turn your distracted brain into a productive machine. Congratulations. You have now at your disposal the ability to strategically use the trillion-dollar lethal weapon to become more successful and take control of your life. But if you want to truly maximize your potential and be able to get more stuff done in less time so that you can make more money by working less, then you also need to look at things like your sleep quality, your diet, your daily routine, your exercise program, and your energy management. And there is a specific protocol I've used to help hundreds of high-level entrepreneurs like Jordan Platton, Thomas Gannett, and Matt Shields to help them maximize their potential and make more money while working less. So if you want similar results, check out this video where I show you what this protocol is and how you can use it so that you can maximize your work output and productivity. See you there.